Welcome back to Real Shift, where we like to talk real shit all day, every day, all for the love of movies and sometimes TV. I am your host, Joe, and today I'm going to be doing my official Westworld Season 3, Episode 8, the season finale, full recap and review. If you like what you're hearing, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. You know the deal. Follow me on Twitter also at RealShiftJoe, or follow the channel on Twitter at RealShiftEntertainment. Any follows, any little bit of support would be greatly appreciated. And without further ado, I'm going to get right into it because there's a lot to unpack here. So, we've been led to believe this whole season that basically Serac is trying to, control mankind, and that Dolores is essentially trying to destroy it. Only one of those assumptions were actually proven to be true in this episode, and the other is there's a little bit more to it than that. And I'll get into exactly what I mean by that as I go on here. So, basically in this episode we get a lot of establishing shots of what's going on in the world. We see the world falling apart, we see riots in the streets, we see civil unrest, we see people fighting in the streets. So there's a lot going on as far as the world goes right now. Things are already falling apart. But as all this is happening, we pick right up where we left off in the last episode with Caleb, and basically he's been directed to this warehouse where he finds another copy of Dolores. And he has her core, and basically he puts it in her, basically brings it back online, and he now has another Dolores clone, I guess, to assist him in his travels. And because now you got to remember, he's been supplied with the actual strategy, with the plan to make this whole thing succeed, which is what Dolores wanted for him from the very beginning. So basically he brings her back online. He found her, and he found a supply of weapons. So basically he's ready to finish off this rebellion, this revolution. So Dolores, along with some escorts, they're trying to get Caleb to the system to basically input the strategy. Well, Dolores, of course, is now being haunted by Charlotte. So Charlotte, of course, is a copy of Dolores. So she can see, she's in Dolores' mind. She sees everything Dolores sees. She knows everything Dolores knows, and she's messing with her. Dolores begins to see Charlotte when no one else does. And eventually, Caleb does get away after a brief firefight, but Dolores is confronted by Maeve, and this is now the second confrontation. They have another duel in the streets, which we all knew was coming. And this duel was just as good as the last one, I'd say. Maeve's going full on Kill Bill in this with her jumpsuit and her samurai sword, but it's a cool look, and it definitely works. And I enjoy every time that these two get on screen together, because they are in a lot of ways really similar, and a lot of ways very different. And that's even established even more later on in the episode. So Caleb gets away, but Dolores, during her battle with Maeve, is essentially incapacitated by Charlotte. Charlotte messes with her and basically shuts her down somehow. And this leads to Maeve essentially bringing Dolores to Serac, which is what he ultimately wanted. Dolores basically tries to reiterate to Maeve prior to this that humans aren't free and that she's on the wrong side. She's still trying to convince Maeve to be on her side, but it never really comes to that. Also, Dolores continues to throw these little shots at Maeve also during the fight, and I thought it was kind of interesting how she basically said, "You wouldn't even exist if it weren't for me," because we got to remember, Dolores is the first host, so if she didn't eventually function properly, because they had hosts prior to her that didn't work properly, but she's the first one to function properly. So basically she tells Maeve that, that you wouldn't exist if it weren't for me. You're basically a copy of me. Every host is a copy of me. So again, another little bit of a cocky moment, a little jab here, something that Dolores has kind of been doing a little bit, which quite frankly makes the characters and the audience not really sure whether they should be rooting for her or not. But as I stated, I jumped ahead a little bit, but Maeve eventually gets Dolores, takes her back to Serac, and this is where Serac hooks hooks Dolores up to the system, and basically he's trying to find the key. So they're probing her mind basically and looking for the key and erasing parts of her memory, her database. So basically they're erasing Dolores is what they're doing, or at least Dolores Prime. During this, Caleb arrives at Insight and basically tries to plug the hard drive into the system to put the strategy into the system and see what happens, which is his ultimate goal. But he's stopped by Maeve, who brings him to Serac. Caleb sees that Dolores is now hooked up to Rehoboam. This is where Serac basically tries to tell Caleb that he's being used by Dolores. Basically, this is a role that she created for him, and he's just going along with it like a dog or like a host would. And it's just find it interesting that he's basically trying to say that Dolores is doing the exact same thing to him that she hated humans doing to her, which is pretty crazy to think about, that we've come to the point now where it's definitely gone full circle and the roles have almost reversed, I guess you could say. So Caleb asks Rehoboam basically what happens if the strategy is uploaded, and it tells him that the world will end essentially. And this creates doubt, of course, in Caleb, because now he is certain that Dolores only wants to destroy the human race. Like, that's her only goal. It's not about freeing anyone. It's not about creating a better life for anyone. It's solely about destroying the human race. And now he's convinced. But Maeve is not so convinced, because she starts to experience doubts. So she questions why it's taking so long to find the key, why she hasn't been reunited with her daughter yet. So Maeve comes to the realization through contact with Dolores that basically Dolores doesn't have the key. It's just a memory in her head that they're misinterpreting as the key. But essentially, it's set up by Dolores to make them think she has the key, but she actually gave the key to someone she trusts much more, and we'll find out who that is later on. So basically, this leads to Maeve essentially confronting Serac about everything, and she comes to the realization also that the system is basically controlling Serac and telling him what to do, what to say. So the whole time when Dolores was telling everyone that no one is free, not even Serac, she was right. He has basically become subservient to this system, to this artificial intelligence. This is when Dolores screams and basically the system shuts down. And this is where Dolores and Maeve kind of cross over somehow in Dolores' memory. And they have this conversation. And that's where she tells her about how someone else has the key. She also tells Maeve that humans were obviously capable of good things at one point. They taught us being hosts, they taught us things like beauty, because we wouldn't even know what beauty is had they not taught us what it is. So that's essentially, again, Dolores going back to her base programming, where it's like she likes to see the bright side of things. And basically what she's saying here also is that by basically resetting everything, shutting the system down, completing her task, that it's basically giving humans a second chance, I guess, to find themselves again, which is honestly a pretty deep philosophical type idea, that humans are capable of good but sometimes lose themselves in their actions and their aspirations and what they want to accomplish in life, and that they need to stop essentially and realize what's important again. And I think that was basically the turning point of this episode, because we now realize that Dolores isn't just this cold-hearted person that we think she is, and that she honestly is still that same host that we saw back in episode 1. She might be a little bit more informed now, but she still is this host that wants to see the bright side of things, wants to see the good in things, and she wants the humanity to have that same choice, to be able to make the choice to be better. And I thought that was just really cool how they kind of brought all that full circle. So this convinces Maeve, and basically she helps Caleb and tells Dolores, and tells him that Dolores chose him because he was involved with some kind of training exercise at one point that involved hosts, and Dolores was one of the hosts, and essentially he made the choice to spare them in the training exercise, and this, I guess, stuck with Dolores. through all of her reprogrammings and everything, and basically, yeah, and she came to realize that he is a good person, and that's what initially made her trust him, I guess, or her, and that's why she chose him to fulfill this task. So Caleb tells Rehoboam to execute the final command, which basically shuts it down and erases itself. This is effectively going to give the world the choice it never got, and now the world is essentially free. And this is where, as Maeve and Caleb are standing on this bridge and buildings are exploding all around them and chaos is ensuing, and basically Maeve tells Caleb that this world can be whatever the fuck you want it to be now. You can be whatever the fuck you want to be. And I think that is essentially the whole point of this season, is just realizing that your choices, you get to decide what you want to be. And I think that was just really cool how they executed that. The other main things to happen in this episode, we have William, after he attempts to kill Bernard and Stubbs, which he fails, then he goes to get his money, which he's having difficulty doing because he's basically presumed dead. So his whole goal now, essentially, he keeps saying, is to save the world. He's going to destroy all the hosts, kill all the hosts, save the world. That's his new role in life. This leads him to Delos, and he goes into, I guess, the research facility at Delos. That's where he finds Charlotte. And this is where Charlotte basically says that Dolores wanted to save the world, and now I realize the error of her ways. So, again, the tables have turned. It appears that Charlotte essentially is going to be the new villain. Charlotte is the part of, since she's a copy of Dolores, she's now the part of Dolores that does want to kill humanity. So I guess she's going to be the villain moving forward, possibly into season 4. But that's not all that happens here, because she also brings a host version of William out, and he's all dressed in black, in his black Western attire, just like he would in season 1. And they kind of have a scuffle. They fight the real William and the host William, and eventually the host William, he tells the real William that the dark side of William that always came out in the park is actually the real side of William, and now that's him. And he slits William's throat. So essentially, the host version of William is now taking the real William's spot, essentially. And it's just, yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about, because I remember back in season 1, all the speculation was that the Man in Black was a host. And that's mainly maybe because of the movie, and because he had a striking kind of resemblance to the main host in the movie version of Westworld, and a lot of people suspected that he would be a host also, but then it turned out that he wasn't. So now it's actually come back around that now he's actually been replaced and is a host. And it's just, I really dug the moment, but it did feel like, I don't know, being a fan of the character of William, it felt a little bit unsatisfying, I guess you could say, to see him meet his, I presume, demise. I assume he won't be back. But it's a little depressing, but it's also pretty interesting considering where we can go from here, with the host William and Charlotte essentially leading the charge now, I guess, to do what Dolores wouldn't do, and that's destroy humanity. So we'll see where that goes. The other major things that happen in this episode involve Bernard. And Bernard, I have to admit, I felt throughout the season Bernard's been pretty underutilized, which is kind of unfortunate because he is one of the better characters. But I guess they were saving it all for this episode because he got a great deal of time to shine. He got a great deal of character development in this episode. So after the whole scuffle with William when they escape, he's given this, Bernard is given this case by a Dolores clone and basically told to go talk to the real Dolores, but he ends up actually going to talk to an elderly version of Lauren. Now, if you don't remember who Lauren is essentially this woman that he sees in his memories. It's presumed that it was, it wasn't presumed, it wasn't really, we weren't really sure whether it was implanted in it, it's an implanted memory, or if it was a real person that was once in Arnold's life, who was the real life version of Bernard. But it come to find out it's actually Arnold's wife. So this was basically a chance for Bernard to release all these bad memories he has. It is a little bit of closure for his character so he can move on with his life as a host and essentially not be bogged down by memories of his son, memories of abandoning his wife, stuff like that. And it was just a really cool, tender moment that he got, that he really didn't get many moments like this throughout this season, but it was nice to see him finally get some closure as a character. It's also revealed that he has the key in his mind. Like, I guess Dolores, because they had this connection, him and Bernard, that she trusted the key to Bernard, which makes him a extremely, focal point to this whole story. He's constantly talking about roles and what his role is, and this is his role. Like, he was entrusted with the key. He also comes to the realization that Dolores was basically he misjudged Dolores. She didn't want to kill humanity, she wanted to save it. And just all these revelations that Bernard has as he realizes he also has the key, and he puts on this device that was in the case, and he sees something, and essentially he shuts down right after that. And then you don't find out till later in the episode. In fact, it's after the credits. This has 2 after credit scenes. One is the host William, and then the other is this one where it shows Bernard still sitting in the same spot, but you can tell time has passed because there's dust on everything, and everything's very brown looking and post-apocalyptic almost. He's still sitting in the same room, and he comes back on, and then that's how season 3 ends. So, I mean, overall, as I've mentioned many times before, I think this season has been stellar. I am hard-pressed to find many faults. I was thinking about it to kind of wrap up everything, some things that I maybe have done differently, and there isn't much. There were some things with the genre episode, with the drug, that I thought they could have maybe expanded upon that a little bit more, or did a little bit differently. Up until this episode, I thought Bernard was kind of underutilized. That would have been a negative, but the way they used him in this episode kind of forgives all that, in my opinion, because now it made him an essential role in this story, even though he was barely in it this season. But overall, I think this season was exactly what Westworld needed to be in order to get back on the right track. Not that season 2 was terrible, but I think a lot too much was going on in season 2 at times, and it kind of made some people who maybe don't have an attention span for that sort of thing kind of check out. And it's really a shame, because they've really outdone themselves in season 3 and kind of made up for all that. They've added more action, they've added more individual moments with each character and given each character moments to shine, and I'm really looking forward to season 4. I can't wait to see where it goes next. I really wish that people would give this show another shot. If you've already jumped off the bandwagon, you should definitely jump back on, because in my personal opinion, it's probably the best show on television right now, and that's just my opinion. But so anyway, yeah, overall, season 3 as a whole, this episode was great, but as a whole, I think this season was stellar. I think it was on par with the first season, which was fantastic. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to see where it goes from here. Let me know what you guys thought about it in the comments down below. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and hopefully we'll see you next time, whenever it may be, 2 years from now, a year from now, for Westworld Season 4. Yeah. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.